Have you ever wondered why the image of a black cube appears across different cultures, religions, and eras? Why do ancient civilizations, modern corporations, and even sacred temples seem to orbit around the same dark symbol, the cube? Could it be that, behind this form so apparently geometric and innocent, hides one of the most ancient traps ever set for humanity? For thousands of years, people have bowed before symbols they did not truly understand. From the Kaaba in Mecca to mysterious cubes placed in corporate logos and space theories, this shape repeats like an echo that refuses to fade. But what if the black cube of Saturn is not merely a religious or cosmic emblem? What if it represents the prison of consciousness itself, a structure of control woven by forces that the Gnostics once called the archons? Tonight, we will walk through forgotten texts, astronomical enigmas, and hidden meanings buried under centuries of silence. We will uncover how Saturn, the ancient god of time and limitation, might not only rule over the stars, but also over the minds of men. Stay until the end, because what begins as a simple geometric symbol may reveal itself as the key to understanding why humanity keeps repeating the same patterns of suffering. And if this is your first time here, subscribe and join our circle of seekers, a community that keeps alive the memory of truths hidden from the eyes of the world. Because only together can we bring light into what has long remained in shadow. Long before the word Saturn was ever spoken, ancient peoples looked to the night sky and saw a wandering star that moved slowly, distant, and cold. They called it the keeper of time, the boundary between the visible world and the invisible. In Mesopotamia, Saturn was known as Ninurta, the god of agriculture, law, and restriction. To the Romans, he became Cronus, the devourer of his own children, symbolizing the unstoppable cycle of time, consuming all things. But the cube, that perfect, immovable shape, appeared as his earthly reflection. It represented matter, stability, the physical realm where spirit becomes trapped. Across temples in Babylon, shrines in Egypt, and sacred stones in Arabia, this cubic form appeared again and again, always associated with the heaviness of the world, the solidity of rules, and the imprisonment of energy within structure. Some Gnostic texts suggest that Saturn's sphere was not simply a planet, but a spiritual boundary, farthest limit of the divine light before it descended into the material realm. To them, the black cube symbolized this descent. The divine spark crystallized, confined, and turned into matter. The demiurge, the false creator, used this architecture to keep souls revolving endlessly in cycles of suffering, unable to remember their true origin. Have you ever felt that time itself is a prison? That we are running in circles, repeating the same mistakes under the illusion of progress? The ancients saw this not as coincidence, but as evidence of Saturn's influence, the weight of the cube pressing down upon human consciousness. And so, from the ziggurats of Mesopotamia to the Kaaba's sacred stone, from Masonic temples to the simulated digital grids of today's world, the symbol survives, perhaps not as a coincidence, but as a whisper of something deeper, a structure that governs not only the heavens, but the human mind. When we look at the symbol of the cube today, we see architecture, structure, or even minimal design. But thousands of years ago, this form was not about aesthetics. It was about power. The ancients saw geometry as sacred language, a mirror of divine creation. Every line and angle carried meaning. The cube was matter crystallized, 6 faces enclosing a hidden 7th point at the center, the divine spark trapped inside the walls of the physical world. To the early mystics, this was a warning, spirit imprisoned within matter. Yet over time, this warning became a tool of worship. In the Gnostic understanding, this was not accidental. The world, they said, had been formed by a lower intelligence, the demiurge, or craftsman, who mistook himself for the true God. He created a material universe to contain the divine fragments that had fallen from the higher realm. These fragments, human souls, were placed into physical bodies, locked inside the cube of space and time. The archons, the cosmic wardens of the demiurge, served as the enforcers of this imprisonment, maintaining the illusion that the cube was reality itself. But what happens when those who understand this structure realize they can use it to rule others? That's where the story turns from metaphysical to political. In ancient empires, priests and rulers quickly discovered that symbols had power over the mind. If the cube represented containment, then controlling the cube meant controlling the people. Temples, altars, and even entire cities were designed as geometric reflections of cosmic structures. As above, so below. To the masses, these shapes were sacred. To the initiated few, they were instruments of alignment, tools to manipulate energy, belief, and submission. As centuries passed, the original meaning blurred. When organized religion began to dominate spiritual life, symbols like the cube were given new names and purposes. What once warned of imprisonment now became an object of devotion. The idea of limitation, of being within the box, was transformed into obedience, submission, and faith in external authority. The Gnostics, however, resisted this shift. They called the material world a cosmic trap, a dark mirror designed to distract humanity from its divine origin. For them, liberation meant awakening, remembering that we are light pretending to be matter. It's fascinating how this idea echoes across history. In Kabbalistic mysticism, the Qliphoth, the dark shells, are said to encase divine light, much like the cube encases spirit. In Islamic tradition, the Kaaba represents the house of God, yet its cubic form has led some scholars to wonder whether its architecture carries echoes of older Saturnian worship. In Christianity, the heavenly Jerusalem is described in Revelation as a perfect cube, 12,000 stadia on each side, symbolizing divine order descending to earth. Over and over, the same geometry repeats, always at the crossroads of matter and spirit, confinement and revelation. Some esoteric historians propose that as humanity evolved, the original Saturnian cults, centered on time, law, and sacrifice, slowly merged into religious systems that carried fragments of their symbolism. The Roman god Saturn became Saint Peter, keeper of the keys. The Saturday Sabbath, the day of Saturn, remained the sacred day of rest. Even the black robes of judges, priests, and scholars might echo the ancient association with Saturn's darkness and authority. The black cube became invisible, not because it disappeared, but because it was normalized. It was hidden in plain sight. Think about this for a moment. How much of what you believe to be sacred might be an inversion of its original meaning? How many rituals, prayers, or traditions could be echoes of an ancient mechanism of containment, beautiful cages for the spirit, disguised as acts of devotion? The Gnostics would say that the greatest trick of the demiurge was not creating the prison, but convincing us to love its walls. And yet, not all was lost. Even within these systems of control, fragments of the original gnosis, the inner knowledge, survived. Mystics, hermits, and secret schools carried the torch through centuries of suppression, often hiding their teachings behind symbols and allegories to protect them from persecution. In every age, someone rediscovered the same truth, that the black cube is not the enemy itself, but a mirror. It reflects the limits of our perception. Only when we recognize the cube within ourselves, the walls of fear, time, and identity, can we begin to dissolve its hold. So, the cube was never destroyed. It was rebranded, recoded, and repurposed. Its edges became the very structure of modern consciousness. Systems, hierarchies, laws, and even digital grids that shape how we live and think. What began as a spiritual symbol of imprisonment has evolved into the architecture of the modern world. But who made sure this transformation happened? Who preserved the cube's symbolism through time? And why? If the black cube represents the prison of consciousness, then someone or something must have built its walls. According to the Gnostics, the demiurge was that architect, a creator unaware of the true source, obsessed with order, control, and obedience. But in the human world, this myth manifested through institutions that mirrored his nature, empires, religions, and systems of thought that promised salvation while tightening invisible chains. After the fall of ancient Saturnian cults, their symbols didn't vanish. They migrated. The priesthoods that once served the gods of limitation and time adapted their language to new religions. In ancient Rome, Saturn's festival, Saturnalia, celebrated the reversal of order, a temporary chaos before restoring hierarchy. When Christianity rose, that chaos was absorbed and renamed, the birth of a savior replacing the rites of the old god. Yet beneath the surface, many symbols remained. The square, the cube, the key, the ring, emblems of Saturn, continued to appear in sacred art and architecture, encoded like hidden DNA in the new faith. Historians often speak of continuity of symbolism, the process by which ancient motifs survive through reinterpretation. But some Gnostic thinkers argue that this was not mere cultural memory, it was strategy. The archons, they said, worked through human systems to perpetuate the illusion of separation. The more humanity worshipped external power, a church, a ruler, a dogma, the deeper the cube's walls became. Every hierarchy reflected the cosmic one above it, an echo of Saturn's law: boundaries, restrictions, obedience. Think of how architecture itself evolved. The Gothic cathedrals of Europe, with their precision and symmetry, were not only feats of engineering, but also energetic devices. The cube was always present in the altar's foundation, in the orientation of the nave, in the geometry of sacred proportion. Everything aligned with cosmic order. But order, in the Gnostic sense, is the favorite disguise of the demiurge. For what better way to imprison a soul than to make its cage appear divine? As centuries unfolded, the Saturnian principle of control moved beyond religion. It became philosophy, politics, economics. The Enlightenment replaced divine kings with reason, but still within the same cubic grid, a world defined by measurement, categorization, and material reality. The invisible became superstition. The measurable became truth. In the spiritual sense, humanity descended further into matter, further into the cube. Now, look at our modern symbols. Financial centers crowned with black cubes. Corporate logos that echo planetary rings. Even the devices through which we now perceive reality, small rectangular screens, are microcubes radiating light, projecting illusion. The pattern persists, refined, digitized. The Gnostics would say that the archons have adapted to technology, but the demiurge has traded temples of stone for temples of data. Yet here lies the paradox. Not all who preserve these symbols do so maliciously. Some secret orders, mystics, and philosophers understood that symbols can enslave or liberate, depending on how they're used. The same cube that imprisons also hides the path of ascension. Its perfect geometry conceals the seed of transcendence. Within its center lies the point that connects back to the infinite. To the initiated, that central point is the key to breaking the illusion. To the uninitiated, it is merely darkness. Throughout history, whispers of this dual meaning survived. In alchemy, the philosopher's stone was sometimes depicted as a cube of transformation. In Kabbalah, the cube of space defines the coordinates of spiritual ascent. In esoteric Christianity, Christ himself was called the cornerstone, the sacred geometry through which the material world could be redeemed. The symbol of confinement thus became, for some, the symbol of redemption. But power prefers one version of the story, the one that keeps you looking outward, worshiping form rather than essence. The same principle that once ruled ancient temples now governs digital empires and social systems. We still kneel before structures, not of stone, but of ideology. We still obey clocks, calendars, and laws of productivity that echo Saturn's old dominion over time. The trap no longer needs priests or chains. It's self-sustaining, built into the rhythm of our daily lives. And so the question becomes, is the cube outside us or within us? The Gnostics would answer, both. The outer structure reflects the inner state. As long as humanity believes that salvation lies in external authority, the cube stands strong. Only through inner gnosis, direct knowing, can the structure begin to crumble. The architects of the cube are not only ancient powers or secret elites. They are archetypes repeating through every age. They live in every institution that values control over compassion, dogma over experience, and fear over truth. They are the same force, wearing new masks, building new walls. But if there are architects of imprisonment, there must also be architects of liberation. For the Gnostics, truth was never simple. Every force in the cosmos, they believed, contained both light and shadow, ignorance and wisdom. Even the demiurge, the blind creator who built the world of matter, was not entirely evil. He was ignorant. And ignorance can be transformed by knowledge. The same applies to Saturn, the ancient ruler of the black cube. What if the planet of limitation and time, rather than being humanity's eternal enemy, is the very crucible through which spirit awakens? What if the prison was designed, paradoxically, to provoke remembrance? In many Gnostic texts, especially those found in Nag Hammadi, the material world is described not only as a trap, but as a school of awakening. The soul descends into matter, into the cube, to experience separation, pain, and mortality. Through these experiences, it gradually recalls its divine origin. The suffering that Saturn imposes, time, aging, discipline, endings, becomes the grinding stone that polishes the inner diamond. The cube, then, is not the end, it's the test. The ancients saw Saturn as the slowest of the visible planets, the farthest from the sun, a cosmic gatekeeper. To pass beyond him was to transcend mortality and return to the higher heavens. In esoteric cosmology, Saturn ruled the threshold between the world of form and the realm of eternity. His rings were not only celestial ornaments, but barriers, the rings of the archons, according to certain Gnostic sects. Each ring represented a layer of illusion, a veil the soul must pierce to reach the pleroma, the fullness of divine light. But here lies the paradox. The soul cannot cross those rings until it understands why they exist. You cannot break the cube until you understand that you built it yourself. This was the forbidden message of Gnosis, that liberation does not come from rejecting matter, but from mastering it, from recognizing its purpose as the mirror of consciousness. In this sense, the cube, the material universe, is a divine technology, one designed to awaken the sleeping fragments of the source. The demiurge, unaware of his own origins, built a world so dense, so heavy, that only through deep inner work could the soul remember the light. The archons may guard the walls, but every test they impose contains the seed of awakening. As the Gnostic teacher Valentinus once wrote, "From the very darkness we draw the oil of light." If you observe the symbolism across cultures, you'll notice that Saturn's color, black, always carried this double meaning. It was the color of mourning, of death and endings, but also the color of potential, of the unknown womb where rebirth begins. In alchemy, the Negredo, the black phase, marked the death of the old self before the emergence of the gold within. "No one becomes enlightened," wrote Carl Jung centuries later, "by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." That sentence could have been spoken by a Gnostic. It captures the same truth. The cube must be entered and understood, not denied. Imagine, then, that Saturn is the cosmic teacher rather than the jailer. He is the guardian of time, showing us that every form decays so that spirit may remember its eternity. He limits, delays, and frustrates, not to punish, but to awaken endurance, patience, and wisdom. The modern world, obsessed with speed and distraction, flees from Saturn's lessons. We fear stillness, silence, and endings. Yet it is precisely in those moments, when everything seems frozen, when nothing moves, that the gate begins to open. Have you ever noticed how the greatest revelations come not during triumph, but in moments of despair? The cube cracks when you stop resisting it. Some scholars see Saturn's mythology as the blueprint for all initiatory journeys. In the Roman myth, Saturn ruled a golden age before being overthrown and cast into darkness, mirroring the soul's descent from unity into exile. Yet prophecy foretold that he would return, bringing back a new golden age when time would dissolve and all would be restored. The Gnostics read this myth not as literal, but as symbolic. The return of Saturn meant the reintegration of shadow, the acceptance of limitation as the teacher of light. In psychological terms, this is the individuation process, the reconciliation of spirit and matter, the upper and lower worlds. This reinterpretation changes everything. It means that the black cube is not simply an external conspiracy, but a mirror of our internal state. The walls that confine us are built from our own attachments, fears, and ignorance. The archons are inner voices, conditioning, collective beliefs, inherited guilt, whispering that we are small, unworthy, and powerless. But once we recognize these forces as illusions, the structure collapses. The cube becomes transparent. The same geometry that once imprisoned the light becomes the vessel that channels it. To the true Gnostic, the world is not something to escape, but something to awaken through. The body is not the enemy. It is the temple. Saturn is not the devil. He is the gatekeeper. The demiurge is not the destroyer. He is the shadow of the Creator, waiting to remember his source. The black cube of Saturn then becomes a sacred paradox, both tomb and womb, both limit and initiation. Within its dark silence lies the first whisper of awakening, the realization that there was never a prison at all, only the illusion of one. So the question is no longer, how do we destroy the cube, but how do we see through it? What if the path to liberation has always been hidden in plain sight, in the very structure of the world, in the ticking of the clock, in the weight of time itself? Perhaps the key to transcendence is not to flee Saturn's gravity, but to master it, to walk its orbit consciously until the soul no longer needs to return. If the ancients saw Saturn as the architect of boundaries, then modern civilization has perfected his art. We no longer worship a distant god of time. We live inside his machine. Every clock, calendar, and glowing screen is an altar to Chronos, the endless tick that rules our days. Humanity has transformed the metaphysical cube into a digital one. Its walls are invisible, made not of stone but of schedules, algorithms, and the constant pulse of information. And though we may not bow before idols, we still kneel before the same principle, control through limitation. Think about your daily life. From the moment you wake, time dictates your worth. You must be productive, connected, visible. The modern person no longer carries chains. They carry notifications. The smartphone, the rectangle of light in your hand, is a microcosm of the black cube, a portal that both connects and confines. Through it, the archons of the digital age whisper, stay updated, stay busy, stay afraid of missing out. What they offer is knowledge without wisdom, attention without awareness. The result is the same old trap, upgraded, a labyrinth of data where consciousness forgets itself. In ancient Gnosticism, ignorance was not simply the absence of knowledge. It was false knowing. To believe the illusion was reality. Today, that illusion is technological rather than theological. We have traded priests for programmers, temples for networks, but the cube remains. Its purpose is to keep your awareness locked in the external world, in the screen, in the market, in the constant flow of content that prevents silence. Because silence, in the Gnostic sense, is the gateway to the real. Look around. Our cities are grids. Our systems are hierarchies. Our minds are calendars. Everything is structured in squares, housing blocks, digital pixels, financial graphs, legal frameworks. The geometry of control has become the unconscious architecture of modern thought. Even our education teaches us to think inside the box, rewarding conformity over intuition. It's the same Saturnian logic: limit, define, measure, repeat. And yet, the human spirit still yearns for something beyond. Some researchers of sacred geometry have pointed out that the cube, when unfolded, becomes a cross, 6 faces opening to reveal a 7th center. This is not coincidence. The same structure that imprisons, when expanded, becomes the symbol of liberation. The cross represents the unfolding of matter into spirit, the transformation of three-dimensional confinement into transcendent awareness. In this sense, our technological world, overwhelming, relentless, and cold, may be pushing humanity toward that very point of awakening. Gnosis, after all, is not comfort. It is the piercing realization that everything we took as real is part of a grand illusion. In the modern world, this realization comes when one begins to question the invisible contracts of existence. Why must I constantly prove my worth? Why does time feel like an enemy instead of an ally? Why do I need external validation to feel alive? These are not psychological questions alone. They are spiritual cracks forming in the cube's surface. Every moment of awareness weakens the prison. From a Gnostic perspective, the archons of today are not mythic beings hiding behind the stars. They are forces of mind, fear, distraction, consumerism, blind faith in systems. They work through governments, corporations, religions, and media, not out of malice, but because they mirror the structure of the demiurge himself, blind to the higher truth. The archons do not need to suppress truth directly. They only need to keep you entertained, divided, and afraid. That is enough to maintain the illusion. Yet there is hope, profound, luminous hope. For the same tools that bind us can free us. The digital cube is also a mirror. Through it, ideas circulate that once would have been burned or banned. The same technology that numbs the masses can awaken the few who seek knowledge consciously. It all depends on how the light is used. Remember, in the Gnostic view, the material world was not evil, only asleep. Awareness transforms it. A phone can enslave or enlighten, depending on who holds it and for what purpose. The key is inner Saturnian work. To master the cube, one must master time. That means reclaiming the rhythms of your own consciousness, learning to pause, to observe, to refuse the tyranny of constant motion. True freedom begins when you are no longer ruled by the clock. When you can be present without anxiety, you have already escaped part of the archon's domain. Modern seekers often look for exotic rituals or secret societies, but the Gnostic path begins in the simplest act, remembering who you are beyond roles and identities, remembering that awareness itself is timeless. The demiurge's illusion loses power each time you choose presence over distraction, authenticity over imitation, silence over noise. That is Gnosis in its purest form. The moment when the light inside the cube begins to shine outward. Ask yourself now, how many of your fears are truly yours? How many of your beliefs were chosen freely? And how many were inherited from the system that shaped you? How often do you stop to listen to the silence beneath the noise? These questions are not meant to accuse, but to awaken. Because every human being carries the seed of the source, a spark of the same eternal light that existed before Saturn, before time, before the cube itself. The modern world may look mechanical, but it is still sacred space disguised as machinery. The cube is still here, yes, but so is the center, the seventh point, the silent heart that no algorithm can touch. The task is to find it, to stand still in the noise, to see through the geometry of control and realize that consciousness was never confined, only dreaming. Every mystery leads to silence. After all the history, symbols, and cosmic theories, the Gnostics whispered one last truth, the most dangerous of all. The light was never lost. Humanity was never truly imprisoned. It only forgot where to look. The black cube, feared for centuries, hides not darkness but reflection. It shows us our own blindness. When you gaze into its shadow long enough, you begin to see the faint glimmer at its core, the same spark that has survived every empire, every system, every manipulation of faith. The ancient teachers said that the demiurge could create worlds, but not spirit. He could shape matter, but not breathe eternity into it. That spark, the pneuma, the divine fragment, belongs only to the true source. It sleeps inside every human being, wrapped in layers of illusion. The archons may build walls, but they cannot touch what lies beyond time. And that is the greatest secret of Gnosis. Liberation does not mean destroying the cube. It means remembering that the cube is made of light moving slowly. Think about that. The same geometry that forms the prison also outlines the path. 6 faces, 12 edges, 8 corners, all pointing to the unseen center. The initiate's task is to reach that center, the still point where all opposites dissolve. There, Saturn's weight becomes silence, not suffering. Limitation becomes clarity. The seeker realizes that even the archons serve the hidden plan of awakening. For without resistance, there would be no strength. Without shadow, no perception of light. That is why the Gnostics called their path the way of remembering. Each obstacle in life, each repetition, each disappointment is another wall of the cube inviting you to look deeper. What imprisons the unawakened liberates the wise. The cube turns transparent when you face it with awareness, compassion, and courage. Suddenly, the same world that felt heavy becomes radiant with meaning. Now look again at the world around you. The screens, the clocks, the structures. They are not enemies. They are mirrors. Each one is asking, "Who are you?" when the noise stops. That question is the final key. The cube will not fall apart with anger or rebellion. It will dissolve with understanding. For light does not fight darkness. It simply reveals that darkness was never real. And perhaps that is the oldest hidden revelation. Humanity has been trapped only by forgetting its own divinity. The moment you remember, truly remember, the black cube shatters, and what remains is the infinite light of the source reflected in every direction. Now you see the pattern, don't you? The cube, the rings, the symbols. They were never only about planets, gods, or geometry. They were mirrors placed across time, inviting the human soul to awaken from its long dream. The black cube of Saturn was never only a structure in the sky or a temple of stone. It was the map of consciousness, the story of spirit descending into form, forgetting its origin, and learning to remember again through the pain of limitation. In every age, those who carried fragments of Gnosis tried to tell the same story, hidden in parables, in symbols, in myths, that creation itself is not a punishment, but a passage. The descent into matter, into time, into Saturn's shadow, is the initiation of the soul. Every fear, every loss, every silence teaches what the pleroma, the realm of light, cannot teach: the power of choice, the miracle of awareness. Through the density of the cube, consciousness learns what it means to be divine. And maybe that is why this symbol still follows us. Why it appears in temples, in art, in technology. Because the source keeps reminding us through the shapes we build. Every structure we create is a reflection of our state of being. The cube stands until the human heart learns that freedom was never about escaping it. It was about seeing through it. That is the moment of awakening. The moment you realize that no system, no archon, no god of time can own what was never created. The light that watches, the awareness that sees, the spark that cannot be measured or contained. That spark is you. You are the fragment of eternity, peering through the illusion of matter, learning what it means to return home. So now the question turns inward. Will you keep walking within the cube, or will you begin to see beyond its edges? Will you let the rhythm of the world dictate your mind, or will you reclaim the silence where the true voice speaks? Every day, you are offered both paths, one of forgetting, one of remembering. And if what you heard today stirred something inside you, a sense of déjà vu, a quiet memory that feels older than words, that is not coincidence. That is the spark responding to truth. Keep it alive. Feed it. Seek more. Here, in this space, we keep that light burning. We explore the hidden, the forbiddens, the forgotten, not to rebel against faith, but to restore it to its origin, to see the divine where others see only stone, to free the soul, not by war, but by knowledge. So if you felt this resonance, if you sensed that the black cube of Saturn was never just out there, but inside, then join us. Subscribe, leave your thoughts below, and become part of a community that refuses to sleepwalk through the illusion. Every comment, Every reflection keeps this gnosis alive against the tide of oblivion. And as you leave this video, ask yourself, what other symbols have I accepted without question? What other truths hide in plain sight, waiting to be seen with awakened eyes? Because the search for knowledge does not end here. It begins every time you dare to look into the darkness and remember that you were the light all along.